Day one, Trump trial, brought to us by Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee reporting, telling us that we're here in New York. Day one, jury selection. He's also written a book about a lot of the Trump stuff. Links in the description to his profiles. Here's what is happening inside the courtroom. Prosecutors are setting up their table. You know how prosecutors are, moving everything around. The entire 15th floor of 100 Center Street has been locked down. We're waiting for Trump to emerge. Poof! Doors open. Trump pops in. Blue suit, red tie, power tie. We saw the photos, looking sharp. He arrives, walks into the defense table. Defense attorneys stand up, change seats. Trump has a seat. There's a quiet in the air. The president has entered the building. Historic day. Never seen anything like this. 234 years of historical precedent shattered because of a false business record from Alvin Bragg, really from Matthew Colangelo, governed by Joe Biden's campaign. Waiting and waiting, but suddenly the judge comes in. All rise. Oh gosh, here he is. Judge Juan, his daughter, Democrat judge. Clerk says, this is the time set for the case called the People of the State of New York versus Donald Trump. Case number whatever. Judge says, good morning. This case is on the docket today for jury selection, Democrat Judge Merchan. But there are a few things to go over first. He says, here's what I've got on my list. First, a motion for recusal for me, given the old side eye to the Trump defense team. Now, you filed that on April 3rd, 2024, and it looks like this motion for recusal was signed by Todd. Hi, Todd. Good morning. And it includes page after page of social media posts. This is the judge. It repeated the same claims. Now, Trump says that the court did an interview and mentioned this case and preparing for it. And that's when the judge sat down and he said, I'm working for intensity. I'm preparing intensely. And he said, the judge also told the media this. He said that we're just trying to do justice here. We're all asking ourselves, well, that's weird. Why would you have to say that? So you're responding to the criticism that you're getting about this being rigged and about your daughter being a Democrat hack and about you donating money to Joe. But we're just trying to do justice, vouching for the court. You're not supposed to talk about that, Judge. Do you feel the need to talk about that because you're conflicted? Feels like it. Methinks the lady doth protest too much, Judgy. Now, this is the judge again. I've read your motion. Trump says the court did an interview, but Trump does not show any bias on behalf of the court. Now, you pointed, Todd and Trump, you pointed to a podcast. Apparently, he says, some member of the court's family went on a podcast. We know that podcast. We played that clip. It's his daughter, Lauren. She goes on and says, my dad doesn't like politicians because they tweet inappropriately. I'm saying, that's weird. When is this tweet happening? Oh yeah, 2019 when Trump is the president. Oh, so Judge Merchan is saying that he doesn't like Trump's tweets, says it's irresponsible or whatever. It's unbecoming of a politician. So he's got some animus and some bias, and he talks to his daughter about it, who then goes on podcasts and rants about it before the judge gets to sign the case. He says, well, but that doesn't show any bias if my daughter's talking about this. Also, judge says, that Twitter account didn't even belong to the family member at the time the post was made. And you're like, well, how do you know that, Judge? Did you bring her in here? Is your daughter going to come in and testify? Or did you send her a text message? Hey, honey, this is your daddy talking. Did you do anything that would make me conflicted off this case? No, Dad, not at all. Great. Certainly not my Twitter account. Great. Thanks, daughter. Love you. Bye. Have a nice day, honey. Be safe. Okay, so are we going to get to investigate that at all? He says, no. It doesn't even belong to her at the time that the post was made. So Trump being behind bars or the bye, right? It's not consequential to this judge. Now, the judge is continuing. He says, Trump still argues that this court's family member does work for Democrats, because she does, millions. But this court doesn't have any particular interest in reaching a particular conclusion in this matter. Yes, you do, Judge. It's the same thing that Fannie had. If the judge dismisses this case, well, guess what? The daughter runs out of campaign advertising content. She can't write her little Facebook ads anymore or send her little newsletters. Trump's gonna kill us all. Vote for Schiff. Give us money. 93 million she's been paid. Many of them from Schiff, and many of the literal campaign ads we've talked about, showed here previously, are her talking about this case that her daddy is covering. So if he dismisses it, all that goes away. Daughter is now out a campaign message. Oops. So he's not going to do that. So the judge says, well, I've reviewed your motion and there is no basis for recusing. I am just doing a great job here. And even if the company were involved in fundraising campaigns that do mention this case, because they are, judges' relatives are free. They can do whatever they want. I'm not sure that's what the statute says there, Judge. We talk about 6 degrees of separation there. There's a statute in New York, your daughter. Recusal is left to the sound discretion of this court. The judge is like, I am excellent with my decision-making abilities and my reason. And he cites a case in re Drexel Burnham. He says, oh, that's my case law. And he says also, so I guess I'm staying on the case. So there's no basis for recusal, so I'm staying on the case. He says, okay, next, Trump also filed a motion about the schedule. Now, there will be no proceedings on Monday, April 29th, and nothing on Wednesdays. Now, if the trial runs longer, the court may convene the trial on some Wednesdays, but regarding Passover, we will not conflict with it. Now, regarding regarding May 17th, apparently the judge is looking. There's a request from Donald Trump to attend a graduation. This is the judge. I can't rule on this right now. It depends if we're running on schedule or not, okay? If he needs to go to his son's graduation, Barron, we'll see. Maybe he shouldn't commit felonies, Trump, and he'll graduate without his father. We'll never forget that. So on April 12th, Mr. Blanche filed a motion. So he says, okay, so I'll tell you about the graduation later. Now, how about a motion for a hybrid jury selection? Mr. Bragg, is there a response over there to the government? Not positive, but I'm pretty sure Bragg's not going to be anywhere near this case since he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just kind of doing whatever Matthew Colangelo tells him to do. So prosecutor 1, is there a response to a request for a hybrid jury? Government. Your Honor, the court is under no obligation to assist Trump in this way. The court could inquire into prepaid travel and childcare and the like, but as long as this does not require the individual questioning of the jurors, then that's fine. They say question 29A is fine. You know, did they work for the Trump campaign? But otherwise, they say Trump's request for any additional questions should be denied. And so Trump's lawyer, Todd, he stands up. Your Honor, we object to a question about if you have done an event in favor of Trump. And we don't even know what anti-Trump means. And the judge says, pipe down over there. Okay, the questionnaire is fine. We're trying to ascertain if a prospective juror is pro-Trump or anti-Trump. And so we ask about that. But we don't ask about pro-Biden or anti-Biden, I guess. So prosecutor says back to the judge, Your Honor, court has authorized testimony about the agreement in Trump Tower in 2015. And this must be the National Enquirer. So remember that there are kind of two women involved here. We have Stormy Daniels and we have Karen McDougal. Stormy Daniels, we know who she is. Karen McDougal was the Playboy of the year, Playmate of the year, I think, one year, December cover edition, whatever. So she had a claim against Trump. That whole thing was settled through AMI, American Media, the National Enquirer, something like $150,000 to her. But that was managed by David Pecker, and they had this, they call it a catch and kill, where if somebody brought a story to this gossip magazine, they would say, well, we'll buy that story from you and then we'll just kill it. So that was set up for this McDougal situation, and that's how that got dissolved of. But that is not charged in this case. None of that conduct was alleged in the indictment, right? So they can't just like, well, you did a bunch of other things, so we're going to add in charges. It's not charged. It's only about the payments from Trump to Cohen that went into the ledger that then got a check written that codified the so-called felonies. So the government is here saying, okay, we know those are the charges, but we're going to talk about Karen McDougal. And they say to the judge, here's what we're going to talk about. So here's a list of National Enquirer headlines saying the National Enquirer was out there trying to assist Trump. They put out a message. They attacked Ben Carson. And there's going to be evidence that Trump said he was pleased with that article that was attacking Ben Carson. And there's also going to be evidence about stories from the National Enquirer about Ted Cruz, including his alleged role of his family in the assassination of JFK. You remember that story? We don't know a whole lot about Ted Cruz, you know, who has a podcast, by the way. There's no evidence that he is not the Zodiac killer. I've never seen anything showing that he's not. So take that for what it is. And against Marco Rubio, an action that can be taken in furtherance of a conspiracy, even if not itself illegal. So he's creating these stories now with the National Enquirer, and that's illegal. Now, the government continues. They say, Your Honor, if there's any prejudice about all this stuff, because it's not charged in the indictments, they're like, why are you talking about it? Just to smear him? Yeah. Then just give the jury a limiting instruction. It's only relevant to show a pattern or something. Now, Trump's lawyer stands up. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. This evidence, Your Honor, would simply confuse the jury. They don't need to hear about McDougal and AMI. They need to know about the actual crime charged, okay? Leave out all that other stuff. It's about the Stormy charges that a candidate Trump met with a publisher like AMI has nothing to do with anything. There's nothing illegal there. Happens all the time. Now, when the people say that there's no prejudice, the opposite is true. They say it's not going to hurt Trump if we introduce all of this, but clearly it will. This has nothing to do with the charged conduct here. We got 33 felonies, and this is just a sideshow. It's about Mr. Pecker and Mr. Trump meeting, and that is not a crime at all. The judge says, well, I'm glad the defense agrees it's not a crime and says it's happening all the time. Good. So I guess then I'm going to allow it into evidence. There was an understanding that certain things would be done in furtherance of this, and so this completes the narrative. We're having flashback to Judge Engeron, where he just says, oh, I know the statute of limitations says that you can't charge that crime, but I'm going to let you talk about it anyways. So the government says, great, thanks. So we're going to talk about Karen McDougal. Prosecutor's like, perfect, thanks, Judge, for giving us everything we want. Next issue says, thank you, Judge. May I move on to the next one? We also want to talk about Karen McDougal, Your Honor, that her contact information was stored. Now, we have no intention of describing any grab 'em by the purse activities during the time Melania was pregnant, giving Trump the side eye, but it's relevant. And the government says we also want to talk about the doorman. His name is Dino Sajudin. Trump's attorney says, Your Honor, we object more strenuously to this, to the evidence about Miss McDougal. There is a risk of prejudice, okay? If they hear all this stuff about McDougal, they're just going to presume that Trump is like a bad dude because of that and presume that carries over to this. That's not what this is about. There is no probative value. It doesn't help us solve whether or not this was a false business record. This is just done to embarrass President Trump, and they're doing it intentionally. Government says, Your Honor, you've already ruled that Karen McDougal's relevant. You already said that. And the judge says, well, my rulings will stand, but I'll have one exception on this. Says, I think it is prejudicial to say that these acts with McDougal happened while Melania was pregnant. Like, what does that have to do with anything? And so for now, no. Like, that's just gratuitous. You know, she's pregnant. Wow, he did it to a pregnant woman. Does that give you any consequence of what actually happened with the business record? No. Does it involve Stormy? No. Prosecutor says, all right, Your Honor, let's talk about this Access Hollywood tape. Says, we seek to provide a more fulsome description about that Access Hollywood tape. We remember this one. This is the grab him by the purse. Mr. Trump brags about grabbing a woman's purse. Yeah, that's assault, brother, is what they say. And we expect to show that debate prep was paused after that purse tape. So we want to describe the tape more accurately. So they want to just write that in, write this into the jury. The jury sees everything. So it's prejudicial. Now, some of the documents from the Southern District of New York, says the government, are helpful to the people. Remember, the U.S. government that decided not to prosecute Trump, the feds, they dumped a bunch of additional material and discovery on Trump, and Trump has not been provided any opportunity to review it. We have a new proposed exhibit, which is an email chain that's forwarded to Steve Bannon and to Kellyanne Conway, which came from the feds. It appears that Steve Bannon, shout out, War Room, forwarded it to Michael Cohen, who asked, who's doing damage control? So we want to show this email. And we also want to show some of the E. Jean Carroll deposition as well. Okay, so they're just gobbling up. It's like the domino effect, right? The snowball rolls down the mountain. They just parlay everything. Okay, we'll take E. Jean Carroll, we'll take Engeron, we'll take all, shove it all into one. Now, E. Jean Carroll deposition, which was also a rigged case because she's, in my opinion, demented. About the Access Hollywood tape, he said, historically, that's true for stars, unfortunately or fortunately, right, was what Trump said. Now, here's the government. Now, the tape, Your Honor, the reason why we have to get this tape in here is because it explains why Trump was so intent on burying the Stormy Daniels story. The tape went beyond, locker room talk, and so we want to put more in. Now, you'll have an opportunity, Mr. Blanche, who has started to stand up. So Todd Blanche is like, ugh! Starts to stand up. Judge says, you'll have an opportunity, Mr. Blanche. Relax. Your Honor, he says, for Trump, we oppose introducing the emails and the deposition of President Trump from yet another case. You're going into the McDougal thing. Now you're going into E. Jean Carroll. Judge says, well, I only ruled that we are not allowed to play the tape itself, but I think the email thread can come in. It bolsters Bragg's claim that this was a crucial event in the campaign. And so Bragg is not limited to the use of words to describe the tape. So the government continues, they say, we seek to elicit the fact that additional allegations against Trump emerged in the wake of the Hollywood tape, that Trump became obsessed with denying and denigrating his accusers. And so this is what the people are going to introduce. And they play some audio. And apparently it's audio from a Trump Greensboro rally. They play this for the judge. Then Gettysburg. They say, apparently this is probably Trump being quoted, says they are trying to poison the mind of the American voter. Every woman lied. Her fabrication, Trump said he was concerned about the impact on voters. Well, he's running for election, of course, dealing with fake claims, saying Trump wanted to lock down this story before it became the straw that broke the camel's back. And so the judge is like, okay, so what do you want in evidence? So get to your point. We want information about additional charges of assault, grab him by the purse by Trump. And Trump's lawyer, Todd, says, Your Honor, these allegations were never proven at all. Judge says the videotapes, he's agitated, they are admissible. So the videotapes, I guess from that speech, from the rally, he's agitated, so they're admissible. I deny the motion to bring in evidence of 3 more allegations. I won't allow that. You can just use the tape. Government says, Your Honor, there's also Trump's attempt to prevent others from providing information to law enforcement. There were inquiries into the payoffs by Stormy and Karen McDougal, and Michael Cohen was told the boss loves you and was told to stay on message. And so Michael Cohen, he met with another lawyer called Costello, who said he had a close relationship with Giuliani and a back channel to Trump. And so Costello said, Rudy, love you, some very positive comments about you from the White House. And so Mr. Cohen then continued to lie for Trump for several months. And the government is ranting here. The truth is, Michael Cohen stayed loyal as long as he did before Trump's pressure. We have a right to show that. In 2018, he pled guilty to campaign finance violations, which we talked about. And the next day, Trump tweeted, he said, if anyone's looking for a good lawyer, don't go with Cohen. Good call there. This should be admissible. It's clear effort to raise the cost of cooperation. It goes to the consciousness of guilt. Oh my gosh. So Trump dunking on Cohen is trying to get Cohen to stop working with the government. government, and that's interference with law enforcement. Says there's also a Truth Social post. Trump said, I did nothing wrong in the horseface case, right? Just another false accusation by a sleazebag. Trump was also trying to influence the work of the grand jury, they say, right? So you can't speak or do anything. Trump can't comment, or else it's interference with the law, right? We're investigating you. So if you comment on the investigation, you're interfering with our investigation. That's illegal. That's a crime, obstruction. This effort continues to this very day. He's still tweeting about stuff. And so we will move for contempt, Your Honor. This is the government. And the judge is like, oh, you're talking my language. He's getting like a little squirmy in his seat. He's so excited. Oh, contempt. Oh, yes. So, Your Honor, Trump posted on Truth Social. He said, thank you to Michael Avenatti for posting the truth about two sleazebags, referring to Cohen and Stormy, the one we read. That violated your court order, Judge, and it may be seen as an attempt to intimidate witnesses like Cohen and Stormy. Now, testifying in this case has cost these witnesses dearly, Judge. They have incurred the wrath of Trump supporters. We should be able to introduce evidence to counter the arguments that these witnesses have benefited from this case, because they haven't, because of MAGA. Todd stands up. Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer. Your Honor, there is zero evidence that what Mr. Costello said to Mr. Cohen ever came from President Trump. This is pure hearsay, and it's not admissible. Now, with the tweets that Bragg offers, we anticipate putting something on in about presidential immunity, because Trump has a right to defend himself against the witnesses broadcasting loudly from the rooftop. Stormy's got her documentary, and Cohen has his podcast. Now, he's facing criticism from Biden, from the media, and he's defending himself. It's not consciousness of guilt. This is America. Judge says, all right, let's go ahead and take a 10 to 15 minute break at this time, okay? All right, relax, everybody. Judge says, okay, it's potty break time. All rise. All right, we're back. All right, Mr. Government Prosecutor, where were we? They say, Your Honor, Michael Cohen accepted responsibility for his actions, and so we should be allowed to bring that out on direct. We should be able to ask him about this and say that he lied on Trump's behalf. And that changed when Michael Cohen decided to accept responsibility when the DOJ actually got him to lie, right? He was actually telling the truth, saying that Trump is not a Russian agent. And then they got him to lie, or else you go to prison for the rest of your life. He's like, okay, whatever you want me to say, I'm happy to say it. So they're trying to reverse that, right? No, the DOJ didn't twist him into reversing all of this. No. So that changed. Cohen decided to accept responsibility. And so the evidence about the plea is essential. It says Michael Cohen is very much like a co-defendant in a robbery case who pleads guilty. We have no objection to a limiting instruction that they cannot accept Michael Cohen's plea as evidence of Trump's guilt. So remember, Michael Cohen took a guilty plea to campaign finance violations, and he basically went in there and it said he did it on behalf of candidate one or whatever it was. Now, they never indicted Trump, but he did go to prison for that. And so they're saying, well, if he pleaded guilty, maybe that's evidence of Trump's guilt because he was doing it on behalf of Trump. And so the government really wants to talk about the fact that Michael Cohen has pleaded guilty to campaign violations, because then he's going to say, well, he was working for Trump, so just find Trump guilty too, by proxy. Trump's attorney stands up. Your Honor, we do intend to introduce evidence on Michael Cohen's pleas. Yeah, we're going to talk about this, that he now says were false. So we're going to introduce it and they're going to introduce it. So the judge says, well, okay. Well, I'm not sure how you can pick and choose. Bragg, would you like to respond? He says, well, cooperators are allowed to testify about their plea. He says, well, my client's not charged here with campaign finance violations, so Michael Cohen's guilty plea to that should not come in. So Todd Blanche wants to talk about the other guilty plea, which was false statements to Congress, which is where he's lying to Congress. So not about the campaign finance violations. And the false statements to Congress would go to his, credibility, his bias, his character for truthfulness, really. Nobody knows what is going to happen at trial, says the judge. So I'm not going to bind anyone's hands now. So we'll deal with Michael Cohen's guilty pleas later. Judge says, I was never asked to clarify this ruling, by the way. So please draft a proposed limiting instruction for me. Got it? I'm like, okay, fine. Now, any further issues from the defense, says Judge Merchan, Democrat judge. Trump's attorney, Todd, says, Your Honor, under the pre-motion procedure in place, we have to give the people 48 hours before docketing it. Remember that Merchan wants them to get permission slips before they submit anything substantive in writing. Now, the people told us that they would seek sanctions if we move forward with the letter before 48 hours. So we asked for permission, then we need to wait. If we don't wait, they're going to ask for sanctions. And so we need clarity. So we have a subpoena to Stormy Daniels, and they want redactions on that subpoena. But what are we supposed to do? Because we can't file anything and we need to now. Well, the judge says, well, we were being inundated with your motions, many of which were close to frivolous, if not frivolous, right? And we saw this, we were watching this. Trump's attorney, we're doing what your lawyer should do, is file, baby. Go, 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 go. It's trial time. Let's go. So they're filing like mad, and the judge is irritated. So he needs to cut them off at the knees. So he does. So he imposes this permission requirement in state court, which is something you might see more in federal court. But here it's him, right? It's close to frivolous. We have limited resources. So so the 48-hour rule is appropriate, but it does not need to apply to pre-motion letters. So by the end of each business day is the appropriate time. And the government says, well, they only gave us half an hour. And the judge says, Mr. Blanche, please wait until he's finished. So Blanche starts to say, and he, shut up, Todd, says the judge. Government says, thank you, Your Honor, for shutting him up. Judge says, pre-motion letters should be 1 page. Now, I noticed the fonts have been getting smaller on your filings. He's like, I don't want to read your crap. Stop making the motion smaller. So he says, you guys, I noticed your fonts have been getting smaller and I'm tired of reading. We have some 500 jurors waiting. Now, the party should just work out these things, okay? Figure it out. Let me continue with my pretrial checklist. Sheesh. And let's begin with the time limit on voir dire, jury questioning. Usually I allow 15 minutes on the first round. Trump's lawyer says, well, we would ask for half an hour on the first round and we'd ask for 20 minutes after that. Your Honor, he says, hey, you attorneys must not offer a reason why the defendant, Trump, may not testify, nor imply that there is a second side to the story for the defense. So if Trump is not testifying, you don't get to comment on that in any way. Is that all right? Understood? Got it. Now, attorneys are directed to not approach the witness at any time. If Trump does testify, the judge is setting some rules, the defense attorney may, of course, refer in the opening statement to what Trump will say, but if not, the opening cannot include any of what the defendant might say. So you need to decide right now if Trump's going to testify. And if he is, talk about it, but he better say it. Otherwise, don't say it. Says speaking objections are not permitted. If there's a reason, so speaking objection is what we saw a lot of, for example, the Fannie Willis case where we were here and the government would stand up and they'd start running their mouth. So they'd stand up, objection, and they'd say, Terrence Bradley has attorney-client privilege was invoked on this day, and so he's not allowed, so that's outside the scope, Your Honor. And then Bradley would be sitting there going, oh, perfect. They just gave me clear instructions on what I'm supposed to do now, because they just ran their mouth, right? Rather than just making the objection with one word, objection, hearsay, objection, scope. Then they get into these long, drawn-out things. If there is a reason, the court will hold argument outside the presence of the jury. Trump's lawyer says, Todd, Your Honor, President Trump wants to be present for everything. Okay, judge says, well, that's going to be tricky. Says, well, we have to figure this out, I guess, but wherever he goes, you know, Secret Service has to go. So I'm not sure they're all going to fit in that room back there when we go back there to have arguments. So I think when the jurors are answering questionnaires, if the juror asks to discuss this in private, then I'll ask them to finish. So the judge now turns to the president. Mr. Trump, you may remember that I previously gave you Parker warnings, and I'll give them to you again. You have the right to be present in the trial. If you disrupt the proceeding, you may be excluded and jailed. And if you fail to appear, a warrant will be issued for your arrest. Do you understand me? Trump says yes. Government stands up. Your Honor, we seek to move for an order to show cause as to why Trump should not be found in contempt of court right now. He posted a bunch of stuff on True Social. And so we ask for a $1,000 fine for each of his 3 posts. And we ask that the court order Trump, this is Bragg's whiny prosecutor, order Trump to take down the post and that future posts could result in jail. Says there's a True Social post up at 9 a.m. this morning, quite possibly sent while Trump was standing outside the courthouse. And there's a photo of Michael Cohen in there, and he's calling him a serial perjurer, because he is. This is a shame for the New York courts. Well, hey, Mr. Prosecutor, he lied in your courtroom, in Tish's courtroom, again, and in the Southern District of New York, either one. So the judge says, okay, why don't you list out those 3 violations? Why don't you list those out? He says, well, there's one praising Michael Avenatti's post, calling them sleazebags. And there's one from Stormy Daniels' previous statements denying the affair when she wrote that letter and signed it. And another one about former prosecutors. And there's also MAGA 2024. He posted MAGA. He's violated this order. Put him in jail. The judge says, all right, sit down. The jurors have been let go for lunch. And so we're going to take our break too, says the judge. And they pause for lunch. And we're back. Back from lunch, the judge is on the bench, says, I am concerned that having Trump coming into the back room to question jurors could be intimidating. So I propose we do that here in the courtroom. We stay here in the courtroom, all the other jurors step out. So we're not going to do voir dire, which would be like independent jury questioning. They pull them in one at a time. We're not going to pull them all back into a room because Trump's just going to be looking at them. So they're going to just do it in the courtroom. Everyone else will go out and they'll bring them in. So I propose we do it in the courtroom. It says, we're expecting a panel of 96 prospective jurors, cross-section of New York. They say, government, Your Honor, hey, by the way, just want to call to your attention that Trump has failed to designate any exhibits as of today. Now, they claim that their obligations are merely responsive. This court, you directed them to provide reciprocal discovery, and they haven't done that. And we propose that all defense exhibits not designated in the next 24 hours hours be precluded, and they have no exhibits at all. Judge says, oh, I like the sound of that. What do you say, Todd? Your Honor, says the people's exhibits have changed a lot from February until now. We don't know what a witness is going to say on cross, and the government's going first, and so we'll have our exhibits later after they've rested their case. Todd says, we also received substantial information from the Southern District of New York, so we're going through 100,000 pages worth of material. He says, hey, here's where we stand. Quiet, Todd. You have 24 hours or you will be precluded. You brought 3 Article 78s. Those are the appeals that our friend Good Logic is working on right now to ungag the president. Only person in the media who's doing that. You've made decisions, and so you have 24 hours, period. Get your exhibits in order by tomorrow or you're not having any exhibits at all. Guy's whack. Todd says, literally, Your Honor, we just got from the Southern District of New York, from the federal government, 200,000 pieces of paper. The judge says, oh, give me a break. We all know there were not 200,000 documents, and you filed 3 motions on Sunday. We're already in violation of the order. Trump's other lawyer, Susan Nicholas, who we saw earlier, says there's a case-in-chief distinction, Your Honor. This is different. Now we're at case-in-chief time.